Hello, everyone. I'm Jim McIntyre, Regional Communications Director for the American Red Cross of Northern Ohio. The Red Cross fulfills its mission with the help of volunteers. About 90% of the workforce is volunteer, and we are so grateful for the people who leave the comfort of their homes to help others in distress. And our volunteers help in many ways. 2021 was an especially taxing year for people affected by natural disasters, and Red Cross volunteers were needed more than ever, as this video shows.
In 2021, families faced emergency needs amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects of climate change, and conflict around the globe. This year marked one of the country's most active years for severe weather, which battered many communities still reeling from last year's disasters. Around the world, an increasing number of families were displaced by conflict and other challenges. And every day, hospital patients in the U.S. needed life-saving blood to battle illness and injury. That's why we're grateful for our volunteers, donors, and partners who make our critical work possible every day across the country. You helped provide shelter, food, and comfort for disaster survivors. You helped provide medical assistance, emotional support, and relief items for evacuees from Afghanistan and others in need. And you helped provide life-saving blood for accident and burn victims, heart surgery and organ transplant patients, and those receiving treatment for leukemia, cancer, or sickle cell disease. Thank you for answering the call to help and to care for one another this year.
Coming up on February 24th at noon, the Red Cross Northern Ohio region will hold a special information session aimed especially at health professionals. Yeah, we count on them too to help people in need. Two of our current volunteers will take part in this virtual volunteer information session to explain that need, and they are going to join us today to give you a preview. Cathy Netter is a disaster mental health co-lead, and Kevin Sauer is the Disaster Health Services Regional Program Lead. I'm going to bring them both onto the broadcast now. Cathy, Kevin, thank you both for being with us today.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, and I'm going to bring Christy Peters on, the Regional Communications Manager, to help us out with this interview because we've got a lot of ground to cover. So thanks again for being with us. I want to start by asking you both to explain the role you fulfill for the Red Cross. So Cathy, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I am a disaster mental health volunteer professional with the Red Cross. And what I do is provide mental health services to clients affected by disaster. And that's done in a couple of different ways. But the goal is always the same, to help mitigate the psychosocial effects of disaster on individuals. I've done that in person and virtually. In addition, I am also a disaster action team responder. So I'm a first responder to some of the individual, like house fire type events that we have locally.
So local disasters as well as national disasters.
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Thanks, Jim.
Disaster Health Services, yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So DHS, or Disaster Health Services. I am a registered nurse, and I support the Red Cross through our health services program. I'm the regional program lead here in Northern Ohio. We help our clients throughout Northern Ohio after a disaster such as a home fire. We help replace their medications, any durable medical equipment, or any other medical needs, making sure that they follow up with their doctors. And we do that not only locally here in Northern Ohio, but as Cathy said, we also do get deployed throughout the rest of Ohio, as well as the rest of the U.S.
Perfect lead-in for the next question.
Yeah, so you both talked a little bit about deploying. For those of the individuals watching who may not know what that means, Cathy, can you start and talk about an experience that you had deploying and what that involved?
Certainly. So as a health professional with the Red Cross, you have options as to how involved you are in the different ways that you'd provide your service. One of those ways would be to deploy to national disasters. And that can be done, it always was in person. So you would deploy for 2 weeks and work 12-hour shifts, for the Red Cross. And then, providing the service that you provide within your professional, ranks. And then, but then because of COVID, there's also an option to deploy virtually to some of the national disasters, to be providing the same type of health services to those people. We're just, virtually on the computer, or we're doing it on the phone. I deployed, one of the things I remember most was deploying to Oregon 2 years ago for the Oregon fires in Portland, in and around Portland. And I was based at the Convocation Center in Portland, which was, could house 2,000 people at the shelter. And if you remember from the Oregon fires, they had to evacuate everyone, so many people, even from the Portland downtown area, which has an extremely large homeless population. So we were dealing with people, who were recovering, trying to deal with the disaster that was happening, who had just a large range of different psychosocial issues. And also among that were families that were displaced from their homes that were maybe an hour away from there. And I'll never forget one couple, they had no family locally, and they were just this cute, man and wife, and we really had a connection together. Ends up, they had a love for these old classic wooden boats that my husband and I, work on. And so we just really had a bond together. They felt understood. They didn't feel alone. I didn't provide any great mental health service to them other than just being there for them at that time. And that was the case deploying nationally. It just was such people were so amazed that we came from all over the country to help them. And that in itself was such a healing thing to be going through in such a traumatic time. So that's my national deployment story.
And Kevin, what about you?
So one of the more memorable experiences for me was responding to Hurricane Harvey quite a few years ago at this point now, but down in Texas. So it was around the Houston area. Actually, I got deployed initially to Houston, and then about an hour and a half away was Beaumont, a smaller city outside of Houston, and just a wonderful team of people that we worked with within our own Red Cross. And it is a crazy small world. We meet up with other people from Ohio and our division that are hundreds of miles away down in Texas, but we're all doing the same. We're all doing the same thing to support our fellow humans and our clients wherever they may be. And for this particular instance, it was in Texas after a devastating hurricane that even 3-4 weeks later, people still could not get to their homes as they were flooded. The roads were flooded. And so just being able to go and help the people in their time of need was a wonderful thing.
Yeah, really gratifying. Go ahead, Cathy.
I was just going to add too, Kevin made me think of this is, sometimes it's pretty scary to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to fly across the country and go to this, natural disaster. I mean, I know I was feeling pretty, nervous about it. And that's the wonderful part about the Red Cross. There's so much support and it's so organized. I was calling it a well-oiled machine because I felt like I knew where I was supposed to go every step of the way. And there were people there to greet me. So, and then we're all trained similarly through the Red Cross. So it's like we're all coming together from different places, but we have a common language and a common knowledge and a common goal. And that just made it so comforting. And honestly, I look forward to my, future opportunities to deploy because it's really just a wonderful thing to be able to do. And the Red Cross makes it really easy.
Kevin, Cathy mentioned something about helping a couple that had a similar interest in wooden boats. Can you think of anything in particular, a specific instance or person or people who you helped that really sticks out in your mind?
Well, I certainly I don't have the wooden boat story, but but there was certainly an opportunity for me to go out into the community. So with the Red Cross, just taking it a step back, we have a variety of positions that are available when we deploy, and even in our normal day-to-day activities of being a service associate or a supervisor or a manager. So on this particular deployment, I was in a manager role. So I'm inside dealing with the other managers and the other supervisory tasks. But being able to go out, even on our days, to go and experience what it is that all of our other service associates are doing by being boots on the ground and being able to see what it is that's out there. We ran into this family who was, like I said, 3-4 weeks after the actual hurricane had come through, and they're just getting back to their house to start trying to clean up. And there's this little girl, probably 5 or 6, that we were able to go and just have a conversation with, and she's just dancing outside, carefree, not really knowing the extent of the damage that's going on, just knowing that there's people coming, and they're talking to her, and she's just being able to put a smile onto her face and her father's face as he was just watching that brief moment, even though he knows that his house, he's not going to be able to move back into his house anytime soon, but being able to see the smile on his daughter's face, and just how happy she was, certainly put a smile on mine, and just been able to, I'll remember that. So
Sure.
It's a great story.
So you've both talked a little bit about what it was like to deploy, but we know that there are disasters that happen here locally all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share about an experience that you had here in our Northern Ohio region where you were able to, use the skills that you have to help someone here locally? And Cathy, you can go ahead and share first.
Okay, thanks. Boy, I have, I think 100 stories, for something like that. It is your response locally is mostly what I do. And so there's a lot more opportunity for providing services, but one teenager comes to mind. This family had a fire in their house, and their house was destroyed. And actually, they were renters in this house, but they weren't going to be moving back there. And they had been a family who had encountered difficulties and had moved quite a bit. But this particular rental place, she actually had her own bedroom. She was about 16 years old. It was the first time she had her own bedroom, and she had made it her own. She was very creative. And so she had, all of her art supplies and things there, and all of it was gone. And she said to me, I feel lost. I feel like I don't even know who I am because her room was destroyed. And so, we talked about how, this was something bad that happened to you, but it wasn't you. And so trying to help her to see that there was a difference there. And then our health services, so disaster mental health, disaster health services, disaster spiritual care, we actually have access to a small amount of financial assistance for families that we can use to help support their recovery. So for me, I'm looking at things like comfort items or things that will help decrease anxiety for people. If they've lost, a specific weighted blanket, or, in her case, she lost all of her art supplies. And so, after we talked for a while, she was doing better, but still she was missing those art supplies. And I felt very justified in helping her to purchase some of those art supplies so she could begin, her creativity again and begin to build a room somewhere else. And so that story is really going to stick with me because, it was only by the Red Cross services that she had as good of a recovery as she could. And at 16 years old, I mean, the options for, going a different direction were great. And so I just feel like I just love that story, and it sticks with me.
Kevin?
So I think one just recently that I can recall was an unfortunate situation where a family husband and wife had suffered a fire, and unfortunately the wife went into the hospital, and the husband was so dedicated that he wanted to spend his time with his wife in the hospital while she's recovering. However, he has his own health challenges that he's going through, but for him, his focus was on his wife. So having that referral to the gentleman, to the husband, to be able to follow up with him, to help him with his health recovery, because obviously the hospital was taking care of his wife. And so being able to follow up with him, work through challenges that he has encountered, such as he just started a new job recently, and so his insurance was changing. And trying to work through the problems and the challenges that all of that entails, as far as new insurance, or working through trying to make sure that he has insurance to cover his medications, to replace his equipment such as glucometers and insulin and things like that, that, as many of us know, is very expensive. And to pay out of pocket for something like that can be such a burden for someone. And so I think having that refocus, to be able to talk with him and have him, okay, take that step back just for a moment to be like, okay, I do need to take care of myself in order to take care of my wife as she recovers. It's certainly something that it rejuvenates me as I continue. I've been doing this now for almost 10 years. And so being able to have these moments in time to be able to spend with the client virtually, so that we can work through the challenges that they're facing, is something special.
Kevin, you mentioned you're a registered nurse. Are there specific qualifications for disaster health services volunteers?
So yes, there are. To be a licensed caregiver in the state of Ohio that has an active unencumbered license. It includes paramedics, LPNs, RNs, can also include DOs, doctors, and MDs. But they do need to have an active unencumbered license in the state of Ohio in order to partake in the disaster health services workflow.
Cathy, I assume the same is true for disaster mental health.
It is. It is. You must have a license. You must be a licensed mental health professional. So that could be a social worker, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. School counselors are licensed. It could be a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Your license must, require that you have a master's level of education to go along with it. We also can use graduate students who are currently enrolled in a graduate program that leads to licensure, as well as, and they also need to be supervised by the staff at the school, but we could use graduate students as well. And in the case of retirees, we can actually have a retiree that let their license lapse for the 5 years after they retire. After that, they need to look at renewing a license, or at least, talking with supervisors at the Red Cross about what to do with that. So yeah, those are the requirements.
Understood.
So you've both touched on this a little bit, but if you could just briefly say kind of what you get out of this, or maybe what you would say to someone who has these types of degrees and could help, but isn't quite sure, if they want to, just share with us what you get from it and why it's something you continue to do. Obviously, it's not easy work, but it must be rewarding for both of you who've been doing it for a while. So, Cathy?
Boy, that's exactly right. I mean, I say all the time, selfishly, I get so much out of this, and it is what keeps you going. But I also have a strong belief that with the right contacts and interventions at this early time after a disaster, you can really help decrease, mitigate, make less severe the reactions that people can have to a trauma like this. I mean, you're controlling, for a further post-traumatic stress disorder, or re-triggering anxiety or depression, all of those things, making a health condition worse. So I mean, it's just, my belief is it's such a beneficial thing. And then you get to connect with people really on your worst day, and they are just so grateful. And I feel like, sometimes in my career as a social worker, I think, man, did I even have an effect on these people, and I believe that I did, and sometimes I'll never see that effect. But with this kind of work, you see some immediate relief, some immediate, oh, okay, I get it. I'm not alone. You're going to follow with me. I will get through this. I mean, every single response, I have that feeling, which is very gratifying. So, and I think that the training that the Red Cross provides makes me feel, it's when I first started, made me feel very confident in what I was providing, and that it was the right thing and the way to do it. And so I've appreciated it. That I didn't feel like I was out there alone on an island as well. So I've gotten a group of colleagues that I'm close with, and all of that just works to impact the client positively.
And Kevin?
So I think, Cathy, you hit it nail on the head there. Just being able to help the clients that we see that have suffered some of the worst tragedies that we can imagine in our daily lives, and by us even taking 20 minutes out of our day to have a conversation with them, and to help refocus their efforts, even just for a minute, to make sure that they're doing what they need to do for themselves. Obviously, never having experienced a loss such as losing a home to a fire or anything to that, but the nature of what must be overwhelming, what to do next feelings. But for us to be able to take just a couple of minutes and make sure that their health and their safety and their mental health is paramount for someone in mind, is certainly something to remind myself what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
And why you've been doing it for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's you get a lot out of it, as do you, Cathy. As we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, there is a virtual volunteer information session coming up on February 24th at noon. And if you have questions for Cathy or Kevin, feel free to join us at that volunteer information session. There is information available to you at redcross.org /NOH. See if I can pull that up for you. We also have information for volunteering in general at redcross.org /volunteer today. And if you need help contacting someone in our volunteer services department, you can email neovolunteer@redcross.org or call them at 216-431-3328. Kevin and Cathy, I can't thank you enough. I know you're both very busy, and it's just an honor to talk to you because of all the great work that you do. You don't get compensated financially. This is all volunteer work, so we really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. It's my
Thank
pleasure.
you both.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we began with a video presentation. We're going to leave with one now. It's just 30 seconds, but I think it says it all.